really since they took Embiid at 3 in 2014, which was 10 years ago, and we did talk about it on this podcast. So now we got a decade worth of institutional memory on this thing. I just see no reason to really ever take a center in the first round unless you think that they're generational. You have to convince yourself that this is someone that I simply could build my team around, really. Because there's just always going to be guys that are willing to set screen and protect the rim and roll hard and catch lobs in the second round and undrafted. There's always going to be those guys. And I would just never, I think about like the Jazz taking Udoka Azubuike at the end of the first round a couple years ago. And it's like, that was such a strange pick at the time. And it's the exact kind of thing. Obviously it was like a 27, I think it was, which is not that big of a deal. It's close to the second round anyway, but there's always going to be those kinds of guys available in the second round. I think of Nick Richards all the time. And Bona is kind of like that type of guy of just a really solid, plays his ass off, knows who he is. I have been impressed by his free throw touch and form. He's shooting very well from the line in Summer League between Vegas and Salt Lake. It looks really nice, and it didn't look that nice at UCLA, and it's definitely not a jump shooting threat, but I am starting to ideate on the idea of Bona maybe having somewhat of a jump shot, but him hitting free throws, even just like at 65+%, is really nice, and I would like that. But it was the exact kind of thing, and they signed him to a 4-year deal to play on the main roster, pretty classic Hinkie special type of deal that they signed him to over the last few days officially. And it just, when you have Drummond backing up Embiid and you're paying so much money to Maxey, PG, and Embiid to take up the cap, like you just got to get guys in the system that are cost controlled, and you can, to be able to go, Bona is backing up Drummond this year. We'll probably play a little bit as Embiid gets hurt and misses time and misses back-to-backs or whatever. And they'll probably still sign some like Tony Bradley type third center or whatever. But like the fact that he can grow into just being Joel's backup the way that B-Ball did for a few years, and Bona is at least much more of a traditional rebounding shot blocking threat, less on the perimeter, although he can do it. I just think it worked out really nicely. They got the guy they wanted. He could have had a first round grade on him. I don't think there's like, Yves Missi and Khalil Ware, like I don't think that they're guaranteed to be better than him. It's just like it was a really competent, good organization, right decision, and I think what we've seen in Summer League from Bona has reflected that as well.
Yeah, I think Bona, did he have the highest standing vert at the combine? I saw him at the combine, and he was like jumping out of the gym at that testing stuff. So yeah, I think he's like a 40-inch vertical guy, and he's like 265 pounds or something. That's just off the top of my head. I don't know what his, maybe he was 243 or something. He had like a very rare intersection of weight and leaping.
Yeah. And
which is cool. That's just a cool guy thing to do. If you're going to take a center, probably don't draft a string beat. Have some dude who can handle the physicality of the NBA. And yeah, like, he's someone who can run with Maxey too. If that ever happens, like he can get up and down. And like he's never gonna sort of go outside of that kind of like narrow role for him. Like I don't know if I'm buying his 3-point shot or having any sort of shot, but you gotta love Summer League. Like that's what it's all about. That like convincing yourself that you're like likely G League bound guy suddenly is a 3-point shot away from becoming a high level role player.
Amen to that.
But Bona, like Morey just knows what he's doing, and getting someone like Bona is an example of that.
Yeah. The point you made about running with Maxey is interesting. The Sixers have really not had a rim-to-rim threat in a really long time of somebody that's just going to sprint up the court, down the seam, and be available to either draw the defense in and create lanes or open shots for shooters, or if nobody rotates over and tags the big, him just he missed he caught the ball at like 18 feet and tried to do like long strides, no dunks. I don't know if you watched the last Sixers game, and he front rimmed it because he didn't take any dribbles, but I love the attempt of him just going like, I'm catching and I'm dunking this. I love that shit. And just watching it go, like Embiid doesn't do that. He's never going to do that. He's never going to run the court. He's never going to be like, I'm faster than you. I'm going all out. Bona doing it like, Hartenstein did it to Embiid sometimes. Plenty of other guys have done it to Embiid because of how big of a role he has on both ends. And just like, if I can beat him down court, that's such an easy bucket. Like the way like Aaliyah Boston does for the Fever. It's just really cool to have a guy that could grow into that. I don't think they're going to count on him this year at all. But I really have liked what I've seen from Bona. Like you said, like strong, physical, elevates on dunks, two-handed with force. He had a really fun back and forth with Donovan Clingan in that game against Portland, where they kept going back and forth as far as like who was blocking who and who was finishing over who. And it was just like, he just knows exactly who he is. And I can't, the differences with centers versus anybody else is like, they can really only play center. He cannot, if he's not going to be playable as a center, doing center things, protecting the rim, being a lob threat, rebounding on both ends, then he's not going to play. And he's just going to be a waste of a roster spot, a waste of a draft pick. And the fact that Bona knows exactly who he is and what he does, obviously I love B-Ball, and we'll talk about B-Ball and him signing with the Pistons. I just need the center to do the center stuff because now the team has a bunch of other guys that can do other stuff, and that it's just making a lot more sense. And obviously Bona is going to foul like crazy, and he's biting on stuff. He fouled out of a summer league game, which they give you 10 fouls, and he's fouling out, which I respect on a deep level. Use them, baby. They don't count. Nothing matters. Just use them. And I think like as far as him biting on pump fakes and stuff, that's just going to come with time. He's just out there trying to block everything, and that's he's coachable. He knows who he is, and I love that stuff. Let's go back to McCain. I agreed with you in the sense of small guard, not that long, not even a little bit long, not that explosive, not even really that quick. He's shifty, but he's not quick. And he has handled the ball a lot more at Summer League than he did at Duke. At Duke, he was really like doing a lot of catch and shoot, running off screens, all that stuff. But I was concerned. He was not one of my guys coming into the draft. I was just concerned about the size and the physicality and being able to get his shot off the way that, we saw in the playoffs and a lot of the season when the Sixers got Buddy Hield. Like he just wasn't fast enough or could elevate enough to get his shot over other players when they were making it a focus point. And I think some of that is McCain also. He's willing to pull from deeper and stuff, but I just think that was a concern for me. And he has not had a great summer league so far. I'm not overwhelmingly upset about it. I think some shots will fall. I think I've seen some stuff that I like, but size-wise, it is a real concern that if you can't get that shot off, then you're not going to be able to play on one end when you're already a vulnerability on the other.
As you describe his game, doesn't that sound a lot like Reed Sheppard? And I don't know if you were a Reed Sheppard guy.
Yeah.
But just like the general outline of their scouting reports was relatively similar. Yeah. Besides for the fact that Reed Sheppard just might be a genius in terms of like getting the basketball. Like if the ball is out there, Reed Sheppard's going to get it. And McCain doesn't have that sort of innate quality. But I think in like sort of broad strokes, big picture strokes, you could see a lot of similarities between those two guys. Mm-hmm. And McCain actually has more of a track record as a shooter if you go back to high school, whereas Sheppard, like no one thought he was going to shoot 50% from three when he was at Kentucky. But McCain is just like, he was a 5-star probably since he was a sophomore in high school. I think he was, Mr. Basketball in California, Gatorade Player of the Year, all these things, like longtime Duke commit. So I think like just having that pedigree and having that track record of him being an elite prospect is something worth considering. And at the end of the day, dude, he's going to have to shoot better than 40% from 3-point range to be a viable NBA player. I'm sure everyone in Philadelphia has probably made the comparison to him and Seth Curry. Yep. There's another player who in broad strokes, maybe he has some similarities to. Seth Curry was fucking awesome on the Sixers for a bit, right? Like that 1.5 season they had him. So I thought that pick was fine. I think I gave it a B. I'm struggling now to even remember who else was on the board. I know Khalil Ware was the pick before. Did you have a guy you wanted them to take when they were on the clock?
I was in like the Collier range. I always like Tristan da Silva. Even like this would have been early for it if it was a trade down, but like a Kevin McCullough type of situation. But
so I liked all those guys quite a bit. Collier I had in the top 10. I loved Collier.
Yeah.
But you could just see the fit with McCain and the Sixers core pieces a little bit more clearly, I think. Whereas like Collier, could you play him and Maxey at the same time? You know, maybe it doesn't matter because you're picking 16 in a bad draft. You might as well just take the home run swing and maybe you end up getting a star. You trade him, trade someone else, whatever. But you can see McCain having some plug and play ability. The one thing I liked about McCain as a player is like, so, you know, with guards, I always look like, can they create an advantage with their first step and just immediately like break that first line of the defense and collapse everyone else? McCain does not have that, and that's just evident to see. But what I do like about him is I feel like his deceleration is really good. Like when he wants to slam on the brakes, put someone on his hip, and just sort of have like good control in tight spaces, that's where he was impressive to me, I thought. And how that translates to the NBA when he's going to be in a major size deficit, even more so than the ACC, obviously, we'll see. But, you know, like just going forward as fast as you can is no longer how basketball is being played. Like now you truly need a panoramic view. Being able to stop is almost just as important as being able to accelerate. And yeah, so I think that like there's some interesting things about him, but you know, if you're going to be a 6'2" guard how many dunks did he have this year? Like he probably barely dunked, I would guess. He's not like a big time athlete.
No.
I don't know. On open catch and shoot threes, he better shoot 45% plus. And then was one thing I was going to bring up is like, he has like that real shooter's range where he'll shoot 30 footers like it's nothing. And, you know, even though those also only count for three, whether they're on the line or before, like there is a benefit just to having that extra spacing and the threat of someone willing to shoot that far. And I remember like, you know, the story when the Knicks got Brunson that Tibbs painted the 4-point line on the court and then Brunson just started shooting from there. McCain is someone who has 4-point line range.
Yeah, Brett Brown used to do that also. Same thing.